I was enamored with my town's history, and these boats were a very big part of it. The main office was located on the oldest boat there, the SS Kenora. She's 117 years old at the time, and much of the boat was still original from when she was first created. So you were literally walking and touching 117-year-old history. My manager used to poke fun at me with stories and experiences that she'd had on the boats while she was working there. And she knew I was a huge supernatural enthusiast, so I was very eager to hear her stories. However, what I didn't realize was that I would have my own experiences from day one. My partner, that I was working with at the time, showed me how to use the old skeleton key to open up the doors of the Kenora. It took me a bit to get the key in the hole, just so, but eventually I got it to work. Once we finished there, we split up so we could open up other boats. There was a little bridge that connected the Kenora to the CGS Bradbury. As I opened the first door to the captain's quarters, I got a really weird feeling that overwhelmed me. It was like I shouldn't be in that room. I was determined to get the job done, so I pressed on. The feeling continued to grow as I went about my business. I was just about to step down the stairs and up to the other side of the landing when I got a chill that racked my entire body. Every single hair was on end, and I frantically looked around at my surroundings. I walked back to the other side, and the feeling lessened. I pressed on and continued to the boiler room of the Bradbury. I opened up the door of the boiler room and gave a hard shove. The door groaned loudly, almost as if it were in protest. I latched it in place and stepped aside. At this point, I'd not turned the lights on, so it was pitch black. As I was crossing over the metal-grated flooring to unlock the other door from the inside, several very loud bangs sounded from down below, and I stood there motionless for a few moments, wondering if it was simply my own footsteps. Again, 3 loud bangs sounded. This time I was perfectly still. Gaining some sort of courage, I asked if anyone was down there, although it would have been impossible to get down there except through the crew quarters, which required a key. My response was met with another row of banging, the sound resonating throughout the metal room, ringing continuously in my ears. I grabbed my phone from my pocket and shone the light down below. All the while, that overwhelming feeling of unwantedness coming back in full force. I strained my eyes to see better, but there was nothing. Just thick, dark blackness. Using the adrenaline from being startled, I finished opening up the rest of the boats and barreled right into the office. My partner looked up at me and smiled. That was some pretty good timing. I smiled meekly back and sat at the desk. Looked out a window as the clouds for a summer rain rolled in. I had regular occurrences such as these almost every day, but none as frightening as I had on my first shift alone. It was about 8:45 when I arrived at the museum. I opened up the padlock and stepped inside to put the security code into the keypad. Just as I finished doing that, I heard a shuffling sound coming from downstairs in the hold of the Kenora. My stomach clenched. At this point, I hadn't even turned on a light yet, so it was pitch black. I grabbed my keys again and began turning on the lights and opening up the portholes and doors. I was just making my way to the back and into the galley, which is the kitchen dining area. I could hear more shuffling and dragging noises. However, these were much louder than before, and they sounded as if they were moving quickly, much more quickly than what I had previously heard them. Determined not to run out of their screaming, I put my headphones in and listened to some Marilyn Manson. I flicked on all the lights and the control panel and turned around on my heel. I was just making my way up to the grand staircase when I heard a very loud bang from downstairs in the hold. Keep in mind, I had my headphones in, with music playing. What the hell was that? I murmured to myself. Reluctantly, I went back into the galley and peered around the corner. There was a small door to a pantry that was open. I knew for a fact that it was closed when we shut everything down the night before. I took my earbuds out and closed the pantry door, and the same dragging and shuffling noise sounded from downstairs. Every part of my being was telling me to run very fast and very far away from this place. But I was curious, incredibly stupid, and determined to find out who or what might have been causing that noise. so I slowly started to walk down the steps into the hold. When I had reached the bottom of the stairs, the temperature had dropped drastically. I was shivering and could faintly see my own breath. This was in the middle of a Canadian summer, which is normally 35 degrees Celsius, plus humidity, so it was definitely not cold. I turned to my right and looked down the long hall of the hold. I couldn't see anyone, and the dragging sound had stopped. An eerie silence fell all throughout the hold, and I remember the atmosphere being very thick and charged. I could have cut that with a knife. Slowly, I continued to walk through the hall, and just as I was about to go into the engine room, I heard shuffling, coming from a door that I'd never opened before. I numbly walked over to it and placed my left hand on the padlock and turned the key with my right. To my horror, the door swung open of its own accord and violently smashed into the wall of the tiny room which I had opened. All that was in the room was a very large silver boiler, and beside it, in the corner of the room, is a thick, black mass. It was blacker than black, and a putrid smell suddenly filled my nostrils. A sudden rush of cold air, and the blur of black told me that whatever this thing was not pleased with me opening up that door. I tried to cry out in fear and in pain, but my own voice was silenced with a sputtering coughing that racked my body. The dragging noise was replaced by loud scratching and heavy footsteps. Fearing for my life, with my face covered, I ran to the stairs and climbed my way up. I didn't stop running until I was at the grand staircase and onto the second floor of the Kenora. Seriously shaken, I took a few minutes to myself in the lounge. It slowed my breathing. I grimaced at the thick layers of dust on the furniture and made a note to dust them later. After I calmed down, I opened the rest of the boats and had a fairly busy day. At around 4:45, I had finished cash out, and I began closing up. I had just finished shutting the lights off and setting the last tripwire when I got that unmistakable feeling from earlier. I got up and began making my way to the entrance of the ship. I tried very hard to avert my eyes as I walked past the staircase to the hold, but something caught my attention, something that should not have been there. I turned my face and gasped in sheer terror as I saw peering up at me two very bright and very menacing red eyes, and that massive figure, blacker than black, crouched at the bottom of the stairs. I said a quick prayer up to the Creator and ran to the front of the boat, heavy footsteps following after me. I punched in the code, unbolted the door, and quickly shut it once I was outside. I grabbed the bar and wrenched it into place over the double doors and clicked the padlock on. The doors themselves suddenly gave a jolt, as if something were trying to get through. I hopped on my bike and rode straight home. I slept into a very uneasy sleep that night. The next day, I told my manager what had happened, and she said the same thing had happened to her when she was working there. She had confessed that she had many a spiritual healer and psychic come through to try to get rid of it, but none had been successful. I decided that I would take a walk down there the other day and just have a look at the place. I lightly brushed my hand on the hull of the Kenora and smiled. But I noticed thick, black ooze was staining its beautiful white paint. I stepped closer to see if I could determine what it was, and I swear to you, I heard a very loud noise come from inside the hold. I placed my ear against the metal of the boat, and from the inside, I could hear the same shuffling and dragging noises as before. I took my hand off the hull, stepped back, and turned around, leaving the Kenora well behind me.